All right, let's bring out the panel. I'm going to go with the lead runner here. They're all producers, so I won't go into all that detail and title and all that stuff. Just know they're the 4 producers of Batman, the animated series. Let's start with Paul Dini. The master of superhero modern technology and architecture. He likes when I make up these things. I make them up every time. Batman, the Guru, whatever. Bruce Timm.
I love you too.
One of the funniest men I've ever known, sly or otherwise, Eric Radomski. A man with absolutely no ego. Honest. Tell me if you know anyone else like that. Burnett. So in the grand scheme of things, because Bruce Timm has never had a question asked of him he hasn't had asked of him previously. Guys, how did you know that the vision for this series would work? Oh my God, dumbfounded, I win!
I was waiting to see who was going to answer
it's
it.
Mine.
Well, you know, we didn't really we weren't 100% sure it was going to work. We kind of hoped it would. We kind of had some ideas that we thought would work. And if you remember, when we had that test come back from that one Korean studio early on, and we kind of went, oh crap, it's not going to work. Because we had this one test, when we were trying out different animation studios, and we got this test back, and it looked like G.I. Joe. And we were like, oh, all this hard work, all this specific design stuff that we did, and all the wonderful background stuff that Eric came up with, and it still just looked like any other action show on TV. Turned out it was just that one studio. So, but we were kind of on pins and needles up until we got the first episode on Leather Wings, and when we saw the rough footage of that, we kind of went, whew, it works. It's going to be great. So.
Everybody agree to that?
Anything?
Yeah, well, to add to that, I think now that it's 21 years later, which is hard to believe, all the experience working on shows, you always go in with a plan and a hope and sort of your experience and trust in your team pre-production wise, and then there's a whole set of hands overseas that you have less control of. So the best you can do is make a really solid blueprint and hope that your studio comes up to speed, and that requires sometimes trips overseas, and you make your best effort to design the show so that it is very translatable, and that means not only in content but in the design, so that you know, if you've ever taken any of your favorite comics or artwork and traced it off or tried to redraw it, you have to think of that in animation as well. There's a couple hundred people on every series that have to pick up on the style. So what you learn as you go through this is just do your homework, really try and make a solid plan, and then hope for the best. And these days, technology helps to cover up a lot of the warts. So that's kind of the way we approached it.
Yep.
What was the most difficult aspect of production? I mean, you guys were trying some new things. You were going different ways.
I want to jump in on that one. Very early on, you know, Bruce and I were first-time producers on the show, and the fact that we had the opportunity to work on developing the show was bonus enough. But when they awarded us the series, there was a lot of eyeballs wondering if we knew what we were doing and how we were going to get things done. So I think it was, you know, the hardest thing was getting folks that don't do what we do to understand and to trust us to do what they hired us to do.
Yeah, we had a lot of people doubting us. Yeah, I mean, thank God Jean McCurdy was our boss, because she totally had our back the whole way. I mean, it was a big leap of faith to put two, you know, neophyte producers in charge of this huge show. I mean, there was a lot riding on that show, and so it was like, you know, to this day I keep thinking, what was she thinking to put us to, you know, totally green guys in charge of the show, but obviously, it paid off for her. But to carry on from what you were saying, probably the most difficult thing about that, one of the aspects of the show that was the most difficult was trying, because we had a clear vision in our head about what we wanted the show to be, and our first story editor really didn't see eye to eye with us. So the first probably 6 months of the show were kind of torturous because it was just, we couldn't communicate to this other person what we thought the show should be, and then the scripts would come in and we'd just kind of go, oh, it's just so typical of Saturday morning. It's so not what we wanted to do. So fortunately, at a certain point, Gene talked Alan Burnett into coming in and taking over the show as a story editor, and then he in turn brought Paul in, and it got a lot better from that point on.
Sure. And to follow up on Bruce, the anecdote for that that first round story editor
was
was
the dog,
yes.
The dog story.
We were potentially going to have, Batman was going to have a dog, and they were going to have recycling bins in the Batcave. So
yeah, that's what our story editor wanted. Yeah, because the ecology is so important now. So Batman should have a recycling bin in the Batcave, and we didn't want to rock the boat. We're kind of like going, okay, but let's talk about mysterious, dark, depressing stories.
Sure.
But then this is the funny anecdote about that is, so then we get Alan Burnett, and we thought, oh, we met with Alan. It's like he seemed like he was totally in sync with us. It's like we talked about what we wanted to do. He loved the pilot film that we had done, and then he turned in the Two-Face script. I think it was the first script you turned in, and we were all like, Hosanna, it's like, yeah, this is the show. This is the show we want. And then he tells us this. He's got this idea for a story. It's like, it's a story about these kids, and it's called I've Got Batman in My Basement. And I just kind of went, oh my God, it's the dog and the recycling bin again. But I'm like trying not to rock the boat. It's like, okay, yeah, that could work, maybe. So.
In all fairness, that didn't come until about like 15 shows into it.
Okay.
And the network was starting to get worried. And
is that really? Is that how that came about?
That's how it came about. So, we did this show, which you could do a scary show with kids involved in what's happening. They wanted a more kid-friendly show.
Yeah.
And we did it, and it was like, that's it. I'm done with this now. And so it's not. It wasn't the show, and so what we did a show for sort of 9 to 14-year-olds instead of 6 to 11-year-olds.
Yep.
And it just evolved that way. And in a way, the network was our best friend in that. I mean, they did push for that, and we had a good. I was out of the kids business before I came to Batman, and Gene McCurdy was saying, "Come on over," and I said, "I'm sort of done with this. I couldn't take another network note," and she insisted they were going to try and do Batman the right way. This is before I met you guys, and so I had like 2 or 3 lunches with her, and the 2 questions I kept asking is, can I have a fist fight, and can I have guns? Because if I can't have a fist fight, if I can't have guns, this is not Batman. And she said, yeah, we're going to do that. And I asked her, I couldn't believe she was saying this to me, and so I asked her over and over again, and she said yes, and I went in, and one of the best things I did was I forgot all the broadcast standards stuff I ever knew, and I just went with the flow, and we had our guns, and we had our fist fights, and we had everything we wanted.
Yeah, pretty much. Yay, guns!
And I'm a gun control guy, so I mean it's odd, but I am. But
in a crime show, you gotta
have them.
You gotta have them.
So all the guns are not real guns. I mean, if you look at them closely, they're kind of ridiculous.
They're slabs.
Looking things. Yeah. So,
but it did prove, at least for my taste, and continues that you can't allow animated shows to babysit your children, because we ran the series. It's lasted as long as it's lasted. People enjoyed it. Kids grew up. Kids were inspired, and all good things came. So I think that a lot of that motivation comes from legal concerns on the network side, but from a purely creative point of view, that's why the big action movies are successful. They don't pull any punches. Kids are pretty reasonable. Parents are pretty good at educating their kids as to what's reality, what's fantasy. So that's probably one of the things I like most about working on the show, and certainly years after, is that we were allowed to sort of disprove that myth. And, you know, and fought the right fight. It wasn't just standing our ground. We really made a solid argument. And when we were posed with challenges for any sort of violence, we came up with clever solutions, and that's the way we dealt with it. And it made the show stronger. So,
the classic example of that was the Robin episode, right? The Robin origin story.
Sure. Sure. And, you know, to be able to simulate death and suggest you know, anything going awry for kids was a big taboo, and yet I think it made the stories more compelling and supported the whole overall dark nature of the show. And Bruce, you know, I don't know if you guys, I'm sure you've seen the shirt that, the illustration that Bruce had done of all the things you can't do, of Batman coming through the window with the Joker and the kid and the crucifix, and it was a brilliant, you know, one-shot summation of everything we were dealing with.
And we ended up doing just about all of those things except for the nudity.
It's true. And actually, we were challenged often when, you know, the famous sort of quote we gave for some of the broadcast standards was, "You can't punch him in the face, but you can kick him in the chest." So. We took advantage of that, of course. And often, I think it was one of Kevin Altieri's episodes where he was determined to get Robin to be able to punch, I forget which villain we were up against, but he was going to punch someone right in the crotch. And it was set up and staged in a way that it totally simulated the punch, and you never saw the contact, but you got the reaction and the staging of it, and it was very, very powerful and very funny. So, so don't let him try and get you down, because you can always figure a way around it.
And it's weird because, you know, this whole weekend throughout the show, I've met countless numbers of people, you know, who came up to me and said, "Boy, you know, Batman was like my favorite show when I was a kid," and these people are like 40 now, so it makes me feel really old. But you know, it's really nice that, you know, that there's this whole generation of people that you know, that was like their gateway drug into comics, you know, and I think only like 1 or 2 of them were serial killers, so I think it's good.
Was there anything you guys did not get to do, or just ran out of time, ran out of episodes, that you wanted to do?
Well, there's that one vampire story that we wanted to do.
Oh, yeah.
There was a character in the comics called Nocturna, who wasn't actually a vampire, I don't think, in the comics, but she definitely had like a vampire-like motif. And so we were going to do this story with Nocturna, and but we wanted to make it a literal vampire story, and I had this really weird idea that at one point she actually bites Batman, and the next morning he wakes up, and Alfred comes in and pulls the blinds, and Batman's skin starts bubbling and burning and stuff, and Fox said, no vampires. We said, but what if it's not? No vampires. So we didn't get to do that. But other than that, I don't remember if there's anything outstanding.
Paul and I wanted to do a Christmas half-hour silent night, an all-silent Batman.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And we just couldn't get to it. And then we did a short, which was a Catwoman, which was had no dialogue in it. So.
That's right. It was sort of like a riff on the Silent Night of the Batman, the Neil Adams story from the 70s. And we couldn't figure out really how to translate it. And maybe we could have done it as an act, but...
yeah, a whole episode silent would be tough.
Yeah.
All right, so go one at a time. Well, let me ask you this first, because you knew what I was going to ask second. Can you watch this show yourselves and enjoy it even close to the way this raving throng does?
Yeah, I'd say no.
I'd say no. I mean, I haven't literally watched an episode in probably 10 years. But the last time I watched...
I can get you the DVDs.
On DVD. But even at that time, all I could see were the flaws and the things that I thought we should have done better. But I can still appreciate it for what it was. I can definitely look back and think, oh yeah, there's still things about the show that are great. The voice cast is amazing. You know, most of the art direction is great. Some of the animation is a little clunky in some of the episodes. It's really bad in some episodes. It's great. And then, but overall, I don't know, you probably think the same thing. Is like when I watch it, I just keep thinking how slow it is. Because I'm so used to like, you know, like films have gotten cut faster, and so we start cutting our cartoons faster. And you know, people can assimilate information on our faster, you know, speed. So when I watch the old Batman shows, I'm constantly kind of going, oh, why are we holding on that show? Cut! You know, it's like so. But other than that, but again, it's been a while, so I should try watching it again one of these days.
I watched Mask of the Phantasm recently. My wife had never seen it, and so about 2 months ago, I said, you know, we found it at the grocery store on, you know, DVD, and I go, did you ever watch this? And she goes, no, I've never seen it. So we took it home and watched it, and, you know, really got into it. It was very engrossing. She loved it, and it was terrific. Plays well.
You bought a DVD.
Yeah. At the grocery store.
At the grocery store, yeah.
For $5.
Yeah, it was in the Warner Brothers bin, you know. It's like next to Scooby-Doo and Tom and Jerry, and it's like, you know. So there we go.
I love that.
There you go. Sure.
Excellent. Home video stock goes up again.
Yeah. One nickel.
All right, go one at a time, right down the line. Give me your favorite episode and why. Oh, Bruce hates this question, but you love this question.
Heart of Ice, because I remember watching the rough cut in your office, and we just looked at each other and go. And
we started crying icicles.
Yeah. It was just like, it works. It works, okay. And it just was great. The two of us just watching it together and going like, yeah, okay.
Good times.
Yeah.
I still have, it's hard to say which one's a favorite because there's so many that I have fond memories of. I mean, yeah, Heart of Ice was definitely one of my favorites. Laughing Fish, which Paul also wrote, was also one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's great.
I still have just an amazing soft spot for On Leather Wings, which is our first episode. It may not be the best episode of the series, but it was our very first one, and it was the first one that we saw the animation and we went, wow, this totally works. And it was dark and it was exciting and it was funny, and I'm sure Eric remembers the first time that we went to the scoring stage over on the Warner Brothers lot, and you know, Shirley Walker's there with the live orchestra, you know, playing, you know, the music for the show, you know, right in front of our eyes. It was just like, oh, wow. So I don't know. I don't have one. I don't have one favorite.
Yeah, On Leather Wings, to steal Bruce's answer, because it was the culmination of everything we had worked for, and it proved sort of concept for us, and it did hold up as a really strong episode. It really embodied a lot of what we wanted the series to be, pardon me. And I think as the series evolved, the shows got better and different, and yet On Leather Wings really felt like that was exactly the type of show we wanted to do. Robin's Reckoning, Part 1, the show that ended up winning the Emmy for us on the series, because of the level of storytelling and dramatic impact we were able to convey in an animated television show, the second tier of favorites, I guess. But yeah, they're all, again, speaking for myself, all the animation we work on are our children, honestly, because you live with it, breathe with it every day. Back to the previous question about, you know, when you work on it every day and you're looking at every frame over and over and trying to make it as good as it can be with the time and the money you have allotted, you can't help but love them and see the warts and sort of embrace them all, and at the same time, you know, you wish you had a little more time to make them just right. But so those are my two.
Well, all of these are I would go along with you on all of these. I liked the first ventriloquist. I saw it.
The Joe Lansdale one?
Joe Lansdale one about 2 years ago, and it was just beautiful. It was like on black velvet. It was just beautiful, and I like that one. I like the second part of Clayface, because that was an amazing thing.
Oh yeah.
And one of my favorite story might be Perchance to Dream. This is when Bruce Wayne gets a Mad Hatter puts a hat on, Batman, and suddenly he's in a dream state, but he doesn't realize. You don't realize this until the end. And the way to get out of the dream is he had to jump off a tower. And I called up BSMP. I said, listen, I got suicide as a way to get out of a. I just want you to know that this is happening. And they were ready to go along with us, but when they saw the board, they got a little nervous. So we had to go over the board and be really showed that an adult would understand it, but a kid.
Yeah,
would,
I seem to remember Batman or Bruce ran towards the camera and didn't actually. It wasn't like a sideways shot where you see him step off the ledge or anything. It was definitely implied that he jumped off the building, but it wasn't.
But we kept it. Thank goodness.
Yeah. And one last thing about On Leather Wings, I remember Eric was very happy to be at that recording session. Do you remember why?
I think so.
One of his childhood crush was in the cast that day. Meredith McRae was a
Yes.
lovely actress, and I remember we brought in the entire cast. It was a great cast. It had Kevin and Bob Hastings and Mark Singer and Meredith McRae, and Eric's like, oh look, it's Meredith McRae, it's Bobby Joe.
Yeah, Petticoat Junction.
Yep.
So that was kind of fun, and that was another thing about the series. The cast was always
Always cool.
just
Yeah.
wonderful. Walk down memory lane a lot of the times from shows we'd
Yep.
seen and people we admired, and they were more than happy to work on the show. So total bonus every week. It was quite fun.
Okay, we did that. Do you, aside from the Batman, do you have a favorite character you got to work on? One that was easiest?
It's
or
tough.
most-
Paul, you must have one.
Oh,
I can tell who it is.
Love writing the Joker. It was great. It was always fun, trying to put myself in his head and come up with different reasons to go crazy or amusing or something like that. That streak of cruelty and comedy mixed together is always fun.
I'm having a hard time. Somebody else go.
Well, I build on Joker because it's just seems to be so easy to love and play with that character. But I loved him most when Bruce and Paul came up with Harley, and once that team came together, it was the comedy, and the psychotic nature of their relationship was just always a blast to see what the directors and the board artists were going to come up with for the way to play those characters. And every time come to the con and see Harley walking around, it's really quite impressive that the character took off and was embraced as much as she was. But she was just fun. She just added a lightheartedness, and yet it wasn't out of character for the show. She was just as crazy as the Joker, just better to look at.
Alfred.
I would almost second the Alfred nomination, mostly because Ephraim Zimbalist, who played Alfred, he's just such a terrific guy and just a terrific actor, and we just love him dearly. He was like your favorite uncle. Every time you'd show up at a recording, he was just such a delight to be with. So. Yeah.
I got to talk with him a couple weeks ago up at
in Solvang.
Solvang, and he said this guy had 9 years on Sunset Strip, 77 Sunset Strip, and then 10 years on the FBI, and a lot of you guys are going, what are those? But they were like monumental pieces of TV history.
Yeah.
And he says occasionally he gets something, but not a week goes by that he doesn't get mail about Alfred.
Wow. That's awesome.
Loves that. Andrea Romano sends a question to us.
Ooh.
Was there anyone in particular that was a casting surprise? Someone that you brought in and just caught you on fire and blew you away?
Oh man.
So many.
Yeah, really.
Well, I'd say right out of the gate, Kevin Conroy. That
Yeah.
story's been told.
Yeah. That's the truth.
That was just the process, again, first time for both of us, all of us actually, going through the process of casting and looking for just the right voice. And Bruce told the story best, where sitting in the booth and seeing the people come, and it's almost like the catalog of characters you see in television comedy shows, the depiction of next, nobody was working. And when Kevin came in, it was, I think we were kind of bored at the point of hearing all the Batman characters, and his voice just, it came to life. And that was really, that was the one that stood out most of all.
Definitely.
We'll not forget that.
And probably Mark too, because the thing about Mark Hamill is that we had first brought him in to do a guest part in the first Mr. Freeze episode. He played a bad guy, And Mark came in, and he was so enthusiastic about working on the show and everything. And then he basically just told us, he said, "So are all the other villains cast? Because I really wanted to play like one of the big villains." And at that time, literally everybody had been cast, all of the main villains. And he was like, "Oh, who's playing the Joker?" And it's like, we said, "Oh, well, Tim Curry's playing the Joker." He's, "Oh, okay. Well, if anything else comes up, give me a call." And then, sure enough, a couple weeks after that, probably, is we made the executive decision that we needed to replace Tim as the Joker. And I really love Tim. I think he's a terrific actor, but I just don't think it was a good fit for our vision of what we were doing with the Joker. So we had to replace Tim, and so we brought in a bunch of other actors to audition for the Joker again, and a lot of them were awful. And Andrea remembered Mark saying that he wanted to come in and play another one of the big villains. So Mark came in and auditioned for the Joker, and he blew us away. It was like, I was so not expecting him to be that guy. Yeah. And he was just amazing. So.
Eric.
Oh boy.
Where are all the title cards?
Yeah, good question. Where are those title cards?
I've seen them published in a book, but I honestly don't know what happened to all that artwork. But yeah, that was half of them, at least the first 65, were all original pieces of art, and they exist somewhere. But the balance, the 20 that we had on the pickup, those, I think every one of them was digital. That was the first time we sort of applied Photoshop to the process and started experimenting a little bit. But that's all I know about that.
You guys talked a lot about Robin up here, a bunch. You kept coming up, Robin's origin story, all that. Loren Lester, he was a unique addition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dead silence?
No.
Sorry.
Bruce was checking that.
I was checking
Bruce doesn't text, and now he does, and it's
I
completely
just got
new.
a text from somebody at my table saying, "Best Harley and Joker ever are here at your table, want to meet you." So, okay, so I got to go, guys. But I heard what you were saying. I do listen, despite what my wife says. I do listen. Yeah, Loren Lester was awesome as Robin. Robin was a tricky character for us because I think initially we didn't want to have Robin at all. I think our initial vision of Batman was that we wanted to play it very much like the first Tim Burton Batman movie, where he was a solo act. We thought that he would be much more mysterious and, you know, just more Batman-like if he didn't have a teenage partner tagging along. But the network really insisted, because they really thought that it would help bring in kid viewers. So we reluctantly, you know, brought Robin into the show. We did make him a little bit older. He wasn't a little boy anymore. He was like already in college. So that gave us the bonus of sometimes he would be away at college, and then sometimes he would be back, you know, helping Bruce out in Gotham City. But I think we actually did a pretty good job with the character, and definitely Loren Lester was a brilliant performance as the character.
Yeah, and his transition into Nightwing also.
Yeah, yeah. I actually thought
brought that. Yeah.
I liked him even better when he became Nightwing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to ask Loren Lester a question if he were here.
Huh.
Hey, where are you?
Where is he?
Loren Lester.
Oh, hey, Loren Lester!
Come on up here.
Wow! Look at that, everybody.
Come here, come here.
You sneaky.
Go that way, through the curtain, like it's the Batcave. We're going to open up the floor to questions in just a few moments. These guys didn't even know Loren was in the building.
Did not, swear to God, did not know.
No, didn't know.
Hey.
I don't really have a question for Loren. I was just kidding around. I brought him all the way from LA
Can I just
here.
say thank you for those nice things that you said. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank God they said nice things about him.
Now, aren't you glad that we didn't say anything bad about him? It's like, oh my God, Loren Lester.
Sure.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
We should have fired him after the first episode.
Who else is not here?
Who else is not? Well, there's a bunch of people not here. We weren't going to go with any voice actors, but I came across Loren, and I thought it was important that
awesome.
we had a one representation. I can speak better than most. Hey, Loren.
Yeah.
What was it like, and do your kids watch Batman at all now?
Oh yeah, they love it. They love it. They're girls though, you know, so they're not not as fanatic about it as if I had boys, but. You guys need to talk to my daughters.
They are actresses, by the way. Quite the singer-actress combo right now.
Yeah, if there was a musical theater Batman, they'd be watching that.
Right there.
There was. We did it once.
Right. Working with these guys, what was the essence of their creative genius? Could you feel it back then?
Oh, definitely. It was having come from a bunch of other children's cartoon shows. You know, this wasn't a cartoon show. This was serious in the sense of the way movies were being made. And I know that's what you guys were going for. And from the first day, it was clear that it was going to be something totally different. And you know, you're talking about the demographic you were trying to hit. I remember in those days, 20, 30-year-olds were loving the show at that time. Which
Yeah, it was
fantastic.
a big college hit.
Yeah. We found out we were actually pretty big in prisons. And it was very popular, and I said, why are criminals watching us in prison? Are they trying to figure out what they did wrong?
I think it was all those episodes where Joker actually breaks out of prison. They were looking for tips.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
All right, let's open it up to the floor because they're dying to win this doggone fabulous prize. And if you don't get any good questions, I keep it myself. Say your name, state your question, and I don't know why you keep checking your phone.
My name is Tony. Good evening. My question is, when I was young, I started watching Batman when I was very young, so it had a huge psychological impact on me. But
this would be one of the guys that was in prison.
No, but it was interesting. It was I remember Two-Face when Two-Face's face gets deformed and the lightning behind him.
Yeah.
I have those images in my head like stuck pretty much. But at the same time, it was wonderful. It was like a wonderful thing because he became like this awesome villain towards Batman. I was wondering what kind of psychological horrors did you guys pour into the show from your lives, or if it
From our lives. Oh boy.
or if it wasn't horrible horrors, what kind of wonders did you guys pour into it to make
My
it such a
mom
great
used to put these rubber bands on my skin and snap it when I was bad. It kind of messed me up, man.
I actually went to a child psychologist to ask about Two-Face because I wanted to find out if somebody could get a multiple personality without it being sexual. And we talked about it, and he said, yeah. Because I was working on that show, and I always felt that Two-Face needed to be a multiple personality before he got his face deformed, and then that brings it out. So,
but if I'm picking up on part of your question, I think the inspiration for a lot of what we did came from the things that we watched and the things that we liked. So any horror movies or action movies or whatever we grew up with, sort of, you try to draw the impression that it made on you and turn it around and apply it to whatever the script was calling for at the particular time. So I think it's sort of that shared love of, being scared or being, put in a position where you have to figure your way out of it. So I think you really have to think about it when you're handed a script and you're asked to figure out this, as Alan was explaining, to animate suicide in a way that was palatable, and yet in the context of the show, we managed to make it work, but that came from a lot of different points of view, and how do you scare someone without showing them the absolute grotesque horror of what they're about to do. So I think that's a general sort of draw when you're creating anything that's supposed to make an impact on a huge audience. So we hope we didn't screw you up at all.
If we did, we're so sorry.
All right, Tony, no more questions, man. One question, go sit. At the end, we'll tell you who won. You're leading right now, Tony.
I think it's safe to say...
Your name is?
My name is Louis. Hello. I think it's safe to say that Harley Quinn was the breakout character from the show. And with good reason. Were there any characters that you thought were going to be bigger that didn't pop, or that you wished had gotten more popular, but just somehow the fans weren't there for them?
Well, Paul and I originally created the character Roxy Rocket, specifically because, this is totally mercenary on our part, we don't get a dime from Harley Quinn. And because she was, the way the paperwork works, she was created for the animated series, so therefore DC Comics owns her lock, stock, and barrel. If we had created her for a comic book, Harley would have fallen under their equity program. So Paul and I would have gotten a little tiny piece of Harley. Anytime somebody sold Harley merchandise, we would make money. So we specifically created Roxy Rocket for the comics first, hoping that she would be our second Harley.
Didn't work out.
It did not happen.
No. Even though she shows up occasionally in the comic books, it just doesn't. You know, there's no action figures.
I'm still waiting for my royalty check.
Hi, my name is Nicholas Bloom. I've really enjoyed this series ever since I was little. You guys have done an amazing job on the show, and I absolutely enjoy it.
Thank you.
What was the most challenging episode you guys worked on during production?
Boy.
Wow.
Boy, they were all had their difficulties.
Well, I could tell you the one that turned out kind of the worst for us was one of the shows we ended up working with a studio in China, if you remember. When the show came back, because it was on the dark surface that we were trying to tell these stories.
Snowstorm?
Yes, the snowstorm. The studio in China was not particularly trained and skilled at producing the show. As a result, we got back, and you're talking about 300 plus scenes of a show, and every one of them had some sort of lint, because it used to be shot on a traditional camera under a platen, a piece of glass, and they never bothered to clean the glass.
Yeah, the glass.
So throughout the episode, you can see speckles of white coming down, and when we saw it, we were horrified because we knew we weren't going to be able to redo the show, but it was a learning lesson, and we no longer, worked with that studio. But those sorts of things where you can't go back and fix them are probably the scariest. As far as not being part of the series, but Mask of the Phantasm was a real challenge because we originally did it. It was intended to be a direct-to-video. I remember traveling overseas with it, preparing the studio, and up until the day before I left to come back to the U.S., Warner Brothers didn't decide to make it a movie. And the last day, I got
while we were in Japan, right?
To Tim Sarnoff, and Tim Sarnoff said, "This is now going to go on the big screen," and we were terrified because we didn't build it to be a big screen piece. And what ended up happening is they gave us a little bit more time on the production side, so it was good enough, but it was not what we intended.
Yeah.
And that's probably one of the only regrets. I wish we had another opportunity to really do a Batman animated feature the way that it should be done, and maybe someday that will happen.
Well, you were the cause of that. It was Eric did the opening. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you did the opening of that movie.
Oh, the CG.
The CG, which an executive came in and just saw the CG and said, "Hey, let's make this a movie." That's how it happened.
Yeah.
So.
Wow.
Bad choice.
Funny.
So thanks for watching. We're glad.
Hi, my name's Drew. I was a child of the 90s, so I grew up watching that show, and it was my first experience with Batman and what eventually drew me to comic books, and not just Batman comics, but in general. What do you think the show had that was able to draw people into such a huge universe like that, and do you think current shows, current DC animated series have enough or have what it takes to sell to children, despite the fact that they're all pretty much aware of superheroes as soon as they can talk now?
It's it's just such a different world. I've thought about this a lot. I mean, it's just such a different world now than it was back in 1992. I mean, when Batman first came on, there was nothing else like it on TV. I mean, there were other action shows, but there wasn't anything that kind of had the kind of sophisticated storytelling that we were going for, and the production values, and all the bells and whistles that it had. Whereas nowadays, there's tons of shows that vie for people's attention, on cable and on standard network television and on Xboxes and whatever, and streaming, live streaming, and it's just it's just such a different landscape. So I'm not sure it's possible for any show to be quite the breakout that Batman was back in 1992. I mean, it was kind of a really different place back then. But
so I'd say that it was, you know, again, we benefited from the fact that as much as there was a little trepidation in the beginning, once we got started, especially once Alan came on and gave comfort to not only the Warner Brothers executives but the network as well, we were pretty much left alone. I mean, they didn't interfere a lot. We had to respect broadcast standards, but from a creative point of view, we were allowed to make the show that we wanted to make, and that's rare these days because there's so many other agendas that go with animated productions these days, and typically it's consumer products that lead the charge. So you're sort of backing into a series that sells product, which is not necessarily a bad thing because you got to finance the project. But if people that, you know, it's the classic, we've said this back then, I say it to this day on shows that we work on, you know, when you get on a plane, you don't go into the cockpit and tell the pilot how to fly. You just sit down and enjoy the ride. Animation, I guess entertainment in general, everyone has an opinion, so they think they have the right to, you know, tell you how to do what you do. So we were just lucky that we had this place and time. Warner Brothers was kind of distracted with the startup of Animaniacs, I guess, which was Steven Spielberg, and all of their eyes were on Steven, and we were glad. It was like, go work with him, and they let us make our show. So that I think that helped quite a bit.
Fox was a brand new network too, so they wanted to make a splash. And the strange thing was that the people in children's programming who we were dealing with were pushing us. You know, we were pushing the envelope, and they were pushing it along with us. But I was told that the high executives at Fox they were expecting an Adam West kind of show.
Wow.
And so when the show first went into the network, I was waiting to hear what was going to happen, but everybody seemed to like it, and it hit the air and did great. Okay.
Hello, my name is Ryan, and later on in the DCAU, you got to, touch on tons of different, characters throughout the DC universe. But was there any specific characters that you wanted to give stories to, or devote an episode to, or even just mention in passing that you never really got a chance to touch upon?
Batman, specifically in Batman the Animated Series?
Specifically, yes, but maybe even in general. It becomes that.
Well, I remember we stayed away from superpowered characters because they really didn't fit into the universe. And Jonah Hex worked because it was a flashback, and Zatanna worked because we treated her as an illusionist and not a real sorceress. And so we thought that if this continues at some point, and we do more Batman-related shows, Superman is inevitable at some point. But for right now, it is a crime show. I had come up with an idea that I think I only went as far as pitching to Alan about doing a very weird, dreamlike Sandman type story where Batman was between life and death, and Morpheus and Death were in it, and it just didn't fly. I actually went as far as pitching it to Neil Gaiman, and he liked it a lot, but Alan felt it was just a little too out there, a little too metaphysical, I think was what you said. And it was, and we'd done like with Perchance to Dream, we had done shows like that. So this would have been like kind of It's a Wonderful Life in Batman's head. Awake and you're going to be in pain, die and rest, that sort of thing. So Paul, I would do anything with Paul. I give him as much rope as he wants, and he would come in and say, I have this idea about Harley and Ivy together. And I said, okay. And he would go into it. I would have trusted you with that. We had a rule about, in the beginning, we had a rule of no ghosts, no something else, and no Humanitas awards. So this is we didn't have to worry about that. There were certain stories we were staying away from, and but we ended up getting with Ra's al Ghul. We ended up getting into that mystic area.
Yeah, a little bit.
But, anyways,
thank you, Ryan.
Hi, I'm Esperanza, and I wanted to ask, how does it feel being as a child watching the 1960s Batman and maybe reading the comic books. And then growing up, working on the show and seeing it expand into a big, franchise like the Arkham games and the comic books.
I was I'll start this answer.
Yeah, please.
I was a big comic book reader when I was a kid, and every year my parents took a big long vacation from Ohio to Florida, and I would prepare a stack of comic books for myself, and to read along the way. And about 3 trips into this, I was like about 10 years old. And somehow Batman and superhero stuff got into the Little Lulu and the Scrooge McDuck comics I had. And I remember saying, I'm going to read this Batman. And we're going through Kentucky. I remember this. And I'm reading it. And it's like, what the heck? And it was an adult world that I understood. I felt like I lost my virginity. I was just... And I never went back to Scrooge McDuck again. It was all, from that point, it was Batman and Superman. Well, 30 years later, we're in the first, 15 recordings over in Glendale, if you remember. It was sort of like dark,
something castle.
Area.
What was it called?
Sound
Castle.
Sound Castle. So I'm there, and most everybody's gone. I don't know why I'm lingering. And one of the publicists says, Bob Kane is right next door. We're shooting some promo stuff. I think it was connected to the Tim Burton movie. Do you want to come and meet him? Yeah. And so I went over there, and it was a bat cave setup. And I'm being led through this dark studio, and I'm going around stalactites, stalagmites, and other things. And there's Bob Kane sitting in almost like a throne thing they got for him in the back. And he stands up, and I'm shaking hands with him, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm in the Batcave with Bob Kane. I have finally arrived.
Hi, my name is Liz Liu, and I wanted to get you to talk about Batman as a character. Like, I was talking to my friend yesterday, and we mentioned how, guys, when we become parents, we're gonna tell our kids that we watched Batman the animated series as kids. We saw Dark Knight in theaters. Why do you think Batman is, personally, I think he's the most iconic superhero to people, and what does he personally mean for you, and why does he inspire you to write such amazing work?
After 20 years, you think I'd have a good answer to that question.
Yeah.
I don't. Everything I have is all really superficial. I think it's the look. I mean, yeah, you can go into the whole thing. Kevin Conroy does this bit about, he's Hamlet. He's like Hamlet, and it's a tragic backstory, and it's all classic pulp archetypes and stuff. So there's all of that, but it's also, or the fact that he's just a guy. He doesn't have any superpowers. He's just fit and really smart and all that stuff. But honestly, for me, even as a kid, when I first saw my first exposure to Batman was the Adam West show, and even then, I didn't know the show was a comedy. I just thought Batman just looked frickin' cool. I thought it was like the best costume ever, and there's all these different variations on it, but yeah, he's the good guy who dresses like the bad guy. It's just, you can't beat it. So hopefully somebody else has something deeper than that, because I got nothing.
I don't know about deeper, but definitely the dark has always appealed to me, just in general. So not necessarily brooding, but the vigilante, the guy that had to depend on his wits alone for the most part, and did the right thing because it was the right thing to do. That just appealed to me on every level. So to blend that into the artwork on the show, and growing up in inner city as a kid, I was sort of always fascinated with the night and the city, and that it just sort of embodied the character. So. To a degree, I agree with Bruce. My preference is on the dark and brooding Batman. Actually, seeing the Adam West Batman, I actually thought it was quite ridiculous. I think it shied me away from comics. I was not raised on comics. I was more into the slapstick, weird, twisted Looney Tunes and Three Stooges and Little Rascals, and that was my inspiration. But until I saw Tim Burton's movie, it was the first time that it occurred to me that this character is really friggin' cool. And the fact that we could build on that was, it just sort of bit, it bit me hard. And I was glad to be part of it. It really spoke to me.
Thank you, Leslie. Hey, we're going to take one. We've got time for one more question, and I'm asking you. I know we could go all night. In fact, where are you guys staying? Okay.
Right here.
Don't rush the stage. They're not signing any autographs. We have to go from here. Bruce's mother is making us dinner, and we've got some things to do tonight, so please don't rush the stage. That won't help. I'll be the bad guy. We're going to take the last question. We'll reward the prize. These guys will be getting out of here. Let's go.
Hey, my name's John. I'm from Canada. Big fan. I just wanted to ask you about what are your opinions about the different versions of Batman, like the Batman with Rino Romano, and what is your take on the direction that it's going with Beware of the Batman?
Sadly, I have to plead ignorance. I only saw a few episodes of the Batman. I kind of liked what I saw. I thought visually it looked really cool. And the same thing, the Beware the Batman, I've been busy with enough with my own projects that I haven't actually seen an entire episode of it yet. I've only seen bits and pieces of it while it was in production. And again, I thought what Glenn was doing with it looked really darn cool. So that's all I can speculate on.
I'm even more ignorant to it. I haven't seen much of it.
Well, he's a Marvel guy now.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I like them. I mean, they're, the Batman is for 6 to 11-year-olds, and it was pretty sophisticated, I thought, for a 6 to 11-year-old show. And it looked great. And I worked on it in the last year when they were putting other superheroes on it. And I love what Glenn is doing. I mean, it makes me sad because I always wanted to work on a CG Batman, and but I'm glad it's happening. It took a long time, but I'm glad it's happening.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to wrap up. Tony, you're the award winner. You get to come back on up. All right. I want to say thank you to Loren Lester, Alan Burnett, Eric Radomski, Bruce Timm, and Paul Dini. Batman, the animated series since 21. Go on, have a drink on that behalf. Hop back here when I get a group call. Okay. You.